Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5. And if I have no idea the number this morning, to be totally honest, episode number 771. There you go, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Friday. Thank God I'm Friday, October 24th, 2025. And I think it's going to be a nice day here at the Beaver Lodge. There was some tiny little droplets of rain, sort of misty almost rain starting this morning. But right now I see some beautiful blue sky starting to appear. So I think we're going to have a lovely day here. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. But DamFam, I come bearing gifts because I've been talking with the Grizzly one this morning, and it appears that this evening around 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we will get together to do a little casual Friday. I would say that it would be Kit Sharon's housewarming party because I wanted to do it last week, but then I saw as we were signing off that she said, well, I won't be able to be there, so it's kind of weird to throw a housewarming party if you're not there. And then yesterday in the chat, I saw that there might be some issue with rain and a roof or something. So I think she might not get the invite to our own housewarming party again today. So we will do a casual Friday, Mr. Grizzly and I, and hopefully you will be able to join us, or Mr. Grizzly and me. I think it's Mr. Grizzly and me in this case. So yes, please join us. I hope because I know that you love your Grizzly time, and it would certainly be nice to have some friends with us when we meet this evening. And we could have Kid Hyper T here in the chat saying we can do my housewarming party. Did you just move? We've been here, by the way. I guess we just celebrated 4th years in August, and we still haven't done our housewarming party yet because just life and renovations and whatnot. We've had people over and all that kind of stuff, but we actually haven't had a housewarming. And I wanted one. Oh man, I tell you. All right, and I must issue a little gentle correction on myself because yesterday when I opened the show, I said we were October 26th, and clearly we were not. We were October 23rd, so sorry. And I think a couple of shows ago I did another one where I said we were completely different years. So I'm listening to this. I said, "Did I really say that?" It's like I backed it up. It's like, "Yep, yep, I did say that." Because B, unlike Pierre, if you show me the tape of me saying something dumb, uh, I I I defer to the tape. But that's just me. All right. Yeah, I know. Cheap shot. I know. All right, kids and cubs. Um, a big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. How is your mental health doing today? Well, as you can tell, I'm in a good mood. I am still, I'm still a little snubdub, but feeling better. Was feeling a little chilly yesterday at some point, so I thought maybe a fever was coming on, but nothing actually came of that. Um, Not listless, uh, but tired. Um, so I slept a lot yesterday, which is good. Again, warm liquids, good stuff. Feeling better. Was still congested this morning. I'm not coughing. My throat isn't sore anymore, which is good. Haven't sneezed in a while. But I'm going through enough Kleenex and toilet paper to keep a small uh, lumber mill operational all on my own. Uh, um, yeah, or a pulp and paper mill, I should say. So yeah, I am. Uh, but feeling better. I think I'm on the upward side of the slope. Got really tired early last night, so got to bed early, but means also woke up early. So I've been up for a few hours already today, and my sleep schedule will be thrown off a bit. But feeling better. And right now, I think I took the decongestants at the exact right time. Because they just sort of started clearing stuff up about 5 minutes before I started talking on the show. So hopefully it will last for the duration, and I will not have to take care of la post nasal drip during the show. All right, and hopefully I won't have any scratchy cough as well. But as you can hear in my voice, it's slightly sandpapery today. So you know, but feeling better. I have to say, feeling better. Um, Taking a quick look in the Magic Monitor today, we have with us Kit Elaine saying also TGIF, and Kit Grace saying, I see we're back in the shitter again. Uh-huh. Yep. We'll get to that. Kit playing with 3D here saying good morning. Kit Hyper T say bom dia. Castorzinos. Good day. I'm gonna guess little beavers. Hoji e sexta. Not sh- I should remember what Hoji is now because I've said it often, and I don't know. And Vai Blue Jays, that I know is go. Go Jays, go. Go Blue Jays, indeed. Because the match is tonight, isn't it? The first match in the World Series for the Toronto Blue Jays. And there might be a little, I'll put it, some extra desire for Jays to win, considering, well, uh, what's going on state-wise with us, which again, we will get into. But we might have our, we might, we Canadian Beavers might have our tails up a little more on this particular night around National Anthem time. Just saying. But around 8 p.m. tonight, Toronto Blue Jays, LA Dodgers, Game 1, World Series for all the baseballs. See what I did there? Huh? 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 Hmm? So, yeah, totally on the bandwagon. Let's go. Let's go get that. Let's bring it. There, Skippy, now's the time. Let's bring it home. That's your cue. There we go. Because we actually know what we're trying to bring home. We have Kit Uncover the News saying, "Morning. I think I'm being silly today. I think I'm feeling a little silly today." And good morning to you, Kit Uncover, and thank you for all you do for us, and thank you for starting the Instagram account. By the way, Kits and Cubs, we do have an Instagram account now, so hopefully the kits will put the link in the chat for you all to go to. But that's a courtesy of Kit Uncover, who started that because, frankly, I just didn't have time. Yeah. So thank you. It's an extra way to communicate with the kits and cubs, and I'm so glad that someone took the initiative. All right. Who else? We have a Kit Bucky saying good morning, all. We have Kit Miss with us saying Happy World Series Day. Yeah, you know it. You know it. Yeah, yeah. All right. Who else do we have? Kit Uncovered with the beaver joke. And I actually saw this one before we started the show, so I like this one. Why did the beaver refuse to retaliate? Because he believes in peaceful negotiations. But I like it. Peaceful and non. See, I said it right the first time. Peaceful negotiations. The first syllable being gnaw, Gnaw, for those listening at home. Very, very, very clever. I like it. I like it a lot. I think I'm going to give it 50 beaver points. Ba-dum. And who else do we have here? We have Kitsu. Hi. Good morning. So nice to see you here. And Kit Tavi G. That's a good one. That's also 50 beaver points. For the third time this week, for some reason, the show wouldn't instantly connect. And Tech Guru Beaver figured out a way to fix it without having to reprogram the entire show all over again. It seems that all I have to do is go back into Restream and just change the time of the start of the show, and then it will sort of rejig itself. It's sort of like shaking it or plugging it and unplugging it and seeing if it works again. And that worked again today. But Kitaviji said it's on pause, PAWS. Is it on pause? I like it. That is very good. I like that. Clever, 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 clever. The kids are so clever. They grow up so fast. I love it. Who else do we have with us here? Okay. Okay, some questions about whether or not there was sound, but it seems it's working for everyone. Okay, good. We have Kit Karen with us. Thank you. That's a new name for us, I believe, or at least I haven't seen it before. So welcome to the Beaver Lodge. Pull up a log, stay a while. Kit Kat is with us this morning. Kit Saucy is with us as well. Good morning to you. Kit Linda M. Uh, yes, nice bit of hail for Friday. Indeed. The Breens are with us. Good morning to both of you. And so is Kit Lori with a little thing about IQ 47 here. My guess is Trump went through another demented drug-fueled rant last night after he eventually wakes up and realizes the consequences. The real hell will begin. Perhaps. Perhaps indeed. Who else do we have? Is that everyone today? Just going through. Wow, you guys are chatty already. I love it. 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 It's great. Kit Moan is here. Good morning to you. And good morning to Mateo Rain and Jazzy as well. And is that everyone here? Wow. So much already. There we go. I finally reached the end. Did I? Yes. Okay. Wow. You guys have a lot to say. That's fantastic. And Kid Bucky here says, I haven't actually seen the ad that set off Trump. I should probably check YouTube, but how bad could it be? Well, don't worry, because we'll be playing it during the show. Kid Bucky, we'll have it here because we like to help. Okay, so for those of you who may not be aware yet, and it's real funny because we just talked about Mr. Chicken and Waffles yesterday. There's that whole taco thing, right? Trump always chickens out. And then people have sort of been adapting that and calling it chicken and waffles. And that's been a little more with the foreign diplomacy thing, like with Netanyahu and Putin, I'm going to do this. Oh, Putin, well, I'm not showing up to the meeting or something like this. Okay, well, I'll give you 2 more weeks, and but then I'll do it. You'll see. And to IQ 47's credit, there were some additional sanctions finally thrown on two of Russia's gas companies that seem to be well received, uh, that people seem to think is a good move from him. So we'll take the W there, I guess. Uh, but okay. But however, on this show, if you've been following us for a while, uh, we've been saying for quite a bit now that we've come to the conclusion that Trump doesn't really want a deal on trade. He wants the drama. Well, yesterday, President Drama Queen had a little temper tantrum. And it seems that he got a load of Doug Ford's commercials. Now, of course, if you know anything about politics, while the president may not follow everything that Doug Ford says, the president has a whole team of people, and I'm sure that there are people monitoring what Doug Ford says because Doug Ford is probably, other than Mark Carney, the most recognizable Canadian politician to Americans, given the sheer amount of times he's gone down there to appear on TV and everything. Um, he spent $75 million of Ontario's dollars, Captain Canada, to buy ads in the United States. Okay. Uh, I guess trying to make the case to Americans in some way that tariffs are not good. And using the words of Ronald Reagan in order to do that. So, uh, that's the first thing. But the second thing is that that if you have been um, watching Doug Ford has been taking on the bad cop role in the relationship. He's the one you saw him recently in front of the mic. We need to punch back hard. Um, with all of us knowing that that's somewhat unrealistic. I mean, we do have leverage. We have lots of leverage that we can use strategically, you know. But if Donald Ford, oh boy, there was a Freudian slip. If Donald Trump, oh boy, ah, gee, I think I need to drink. Mm, there you go. If Donald Trump See, I lost my thought now. I threw myself off. Oh my god, Donald Ford. Wow, that was a slip. Um, yeah, I forgot where I was going, to be totally honest. If any of the kids could remind me, that would be helpful. Oh my god. Uh, oh, geez. But anyway, okay, who knows? We'll figure it out. The thought will probably come back to me again later. Um, but yes. Oh, yeah. The other thing about Doug Ford is that, doing that whole thing that we need to fight back hard, playing the bad cop thing. Um, Donald Trump's team sees those instances, right? When he threatens to cut off the electricity, when he pours the Crown Royal down, all that kind of stuff. And that does get reported back. So, um, I guess word of this advertisement got to Donald Trump, or because he watches a lot of Fox and that kind of stuff, maybe he actually did get to see it himself. And I see Kit Grace putting something in the chat, getting ahead of me. But yes, we're on the same wavelength there, Kit Grace. um, and well, let's look at the ad first, since I promised it to you, and then see um, whether or not uh, there was something in insensitive that would cause the President of the United States, who we know to be mercurial and very, very, very sensitive, to determine that all trade talks with Canada were going to be uh, suspended for now. All right.
Are at stake.
So that was the ad. Nothing but the words of former President Ronald Reagan, the alleged great communicator in Republican circles. Communicator. The guy that they all worshipped prior to Donald Trump. No additional commentary. Images that kind of vibe what's going on in there. Businesses shutting down and people losing their jobs. But they are the words of Ronald Reagan talking about how tariffs are just not it, that they don't work. I'm not sure what's offensive in there, other than the fact that to Trump, that someone's stepping up to him, but the content of the ad itself isn't offensive in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, he lost his mind and went on a pretty big rant. And well, like I said, basically the trade talks are off. He tweeted, I guess he truthed or whatever it is they call it, is this here. The Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, all caps, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. The ad was for $75,000. Okay. They only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. Okay. This in all caps. Tariffs are very important to the national security and economy of the USA. Small letters. Based on their egregious behavior, all caps again, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. 10:39 p.m. Prime Minister's just about to go to the ASEAN summit, delivers that big speech. We start talking a little bit openly about how we're working on sector by sector deals that may have some benefit from us based on where we are now on steel, aluminum, and maybe something with energy. And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump hears the words of Ronald Reagan as brought to Americans by the government of Ontario and claims that the Reagan Foundation announced that we have fraudulently used an advertisement. That doesn't even make sense. They only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. How? How does anyone buying an ad interfere with a court decision? It's not entered into evidence in the courtroom. It seeks to influence people, American citizens, Maybe they call their representatives, but to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other court. Really? Just this constitutes egregious behavior worthy of cutting off trade negotiations. I mean, okay, I guess you can do you, but yeah, this is a temper tantrum. According to the Toronto Star here, I'm sorry, kids and cubs. I am exhausted with this guy. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to be the prime minister and have to deal with this fathermucker. I've just, and pardon my language, but I am exhausted by this. It is never going to stop. And I know that that's the whole point, right? It's to get us to just put our arms down and give up and says, fuck, he's just going to keep coming at us. Just shut him up and give him what he wants. Buy ourselves some peace for a little bit, I guess. But it just, you give him a fingernail, he wants the finger. You give him a finger, he wants the hand. You give him the hand, he wants the wrist as well. You give him the wrist, he wants up to the elbow, right? It just never stops. I guess, and you just keep on slicing pieces of yourself off until he's got the whole thing, right? Because he's this immense gaping void of endless need that cannot be filled. Ugh. He's exhausting. He's literally like water trying to take down a mountain just by force, eventually of erosion. He just keeps coming and coming and coming. No matter how many times you throw him off you, he keeps trying to climb back on top of you. He's exhausting. I'm just so, all right. Let's see if I can now find the article I was trying to open. Because I'm throwing myself off today. I have to admit, I'm throwing myself off today rather hard. I just had the article open in front of me, and I don't know what I did with it with regard to him having screwed up. So there it is, right here. Okay. According to the Toronto Star, this appeared in the Toronto Star by Will Weissert of the Associated Press. President Donald Trump said late Thursday that he was ending, quote, all trade negotiations with Canada because of a television ad opposing U.S. tariffs that he said misstated the facts and called, quote, egregious behavior aimed at influencing U.S. court decisions. The post on Trump's social media site came after Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said he aims to double his country's exports to countries outside the U.S. because of the threat posed by Trump's tariffs. Trump's call for an abrupt end to negotiations could further inflame trade tensions that already have been building between the two neighboring countries for months. Trump posted, quote, the Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. And they go on to read the whole thing that I just read before there. To cite, I should say. Carney's office didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. The prime minister was set to leave Friday morning for a summit in Asia, while Trump is set to do the same Friday evening. Earlier Thursday night, the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute posted on X that an ad created by the government of Ontario, quote, misrepresents the presidential radio address to the nation on free and fair trade, dated April 25th, 1987. It added that Ontario did not receive foundation permission to use and edit the remarks. The foundation said it is, quote, reviewing legal options in this matter and invited the public to watch the unedited video of Reagan's address. Carney met with Trump earlier this month to try and ease trade tensions as the two countries and Mexico prepare for a review of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, a trade deal Trump negotiated in his first term but has since soured on. Now, with regard to the Reagan address, there are a couple of takes on it that I hope I had cited them. But I may not have because the news was coming really fast. There were a few takes on it. I believe it was Midas Touch had posted a longer version of it and had provided some context to what it is that was in the full addressed here. So hopefully maybe not. Okay. But they put about like 5 minutes of it out, stating, 2 minutes and 17 seconds here. And, you can listen to it for yourself in response to the Ronald Reagan Foundation that put it out. And they said here, listen to President Reagan's unedited remarks here. So they have it, the full thing there. And they have that text that they put out. And then the Midas Touch people turned around and said, wow, truly shameful for you to lie like this, all for Trump. His unedited remarks actually go even further in expressing his hatred of tariffs. He was against everything Trump stands for. And then Midas Touch took about 2 minutes and 17 seconds from the address and then played that so that you can hear more of what it is that he was saying. But then there are other people that say that if you actually listen to the full thing, which I assume in this case would be significant. Here it is, 5 minutes and 10 seconds. And this is from the Reagan Library. That you will hear that at one he puts a caveat on this, and that the caveat negates everything that's in the Doug Ford commercial. So, since we're doing this, let's take a look at the full 5-minute address as provided by the Reagan Library. And let's see if the usage, now, if they needed permission to do it and edit it, that's Doug Ford, but that wouldn't be surprising because the conservatives seem to have a habit of taking things that are copyrighted and need permission and just using them. Wouldn't be the first time. But it might have been used without permission, but was it a misrepresentation of Reagan's words? Let's find out. I've never heard the full address, so we'll learn at the same time. So this is April 25th, 1987, President Reagan's address.
My fellow Americans, Prime Minister Nakasone of Japan will be visiting me here at the White House next week. It's an important visit because while I expect to take up our relations with our good friend Japan, which overall remain excellent, recent disagreements between our two countries on the issue of trade will also be high on our agenda. As perhaps you've heard, last week I placed new duties on some Japanese products in response to Japan's inability to enforce their trade agreement with us on electronic devices called semiconductors. Now, imposing such tariffs or trade barriers and restrictions of any kind are steps that I am loath to take, and in a moment I'll mention the sound economic reasons for this, that over the long run such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. But the Japanese semiconductors were a special case. We had clear evidence that Japanese companies were engaging in unfair trade practices that violated an agreement between Japan and the United States. We expect our trading partners to live up to their agreements. As I've often said, our commitment to free trade is also a commitment to fair trade. But in imposing these tariffs, we were just trying to deal with a particular problem, not begin a trade war. So next week, I'll be giving Prime Minister Nakasone this same message. We want to continue to work cooperatively on trade problems and want very much to lift these trade restrictions as soon as evidence permits. We want to do this because we feel both Japan and the United States have an obligation to promote the prosperity and economic development that only free trade can bring. Now, that message of free trade is one I conveyed to Canada's leaders a few weeks ago, and it was warmly received there. Indeed, throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. Now, there are sound historical reasons for this. For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports. Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well. In certain select cases, like the Japanese semiconductors, we've taken steps to stop unfair practices against American products, but we've still maintained our basic long-term commitment to free trade and economic growth. So, with my meeting with Prime Minister Nakasone and the Venice Economic Summit coming up, it's terribly important not to restrict a president's options in such trade dealings with foreign governments. Unfortunately, some in the Congress are trying to do exactly that. I'll keep you informed on this dangerous legislation because it's just another form of protectionism, and I may need your help to stop it. Remember, America's jobs and growth are at stake. Until next week, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
So, yeah, that was the extent of it. What I heard in that speech is him announcing that he was going to be putting some tariffs on Japan because allegedly Japan was not honoring their side of an agreement, and that he was stating that this was a very extraordinary measure because tariffs are not a good thing. So that this was a very specific tariff done for a very specific reason at a specific moment, and somewhat had to explain himself because this goes against a lot of things that he had said before with regard to tariffs. I don't see anything in there saying that tariffs are good, except or tariffs are terrible except in a certain case. Or I mean, I guess you can sort of get that, like they do have a purpose, right? They can have a purpose. They can serve a purpose, but long-term application is definitely not good, and that the bias should always be towards free and fair trade. So I'm maybe you guys heard something in there that I'm not aware of or that I missed, but I don't see anything in there that is making a case that would support Donald Trump's use of tariffs in the way that he is using them now. So I was skeptical of the second take because it came from one of the convoy lawyers. But I said, hey, if you listen to it all, and it's like, hey, you know what? I had never heard of it. I was open to being convinced that there was more to it. That if there was 5 minutes of video, the 2 minutes that the people from the Midas Touch took, might have been, you know, strategically selected. But there's nothing in the rest of it that deviates from the passage that Doug Ford used in the commercial or that the Midas Touch guys used in their clip. It just doesn't have the bit at the beginning that said that this was in the context that Ronald Reagan was exceptionally imposing tariffs on Japan. And the types of tariffs he was imposing on Japan were not, oh my God, I've suddenly decided that Canadian aluminum is a national security threat to the United States, therefore imposing tariffs. It seems that they had an agreement and a deal and Japan was not living up to the terms. Which is really, really, really ironic because yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada announced that because those two auto companies, Stellantis and can't remember off the top of my head what the other one was, but the other one was making electric vehicles larger size, and they weren't selling as well as they should. Now, there could be many reasons for that. I'm not sure if it was the product itself that wasn't just popular, or the fact that like I said, the EV rebate policy and all that kind of stuff disappeared, so people stopped buying at that point, and then there was enough. But the claim from the Canadians is that they are violating the deal. It seems that that second factory, we had invested about $105 million to retool it so that that vehicle could be produced there. Now, all of a sudden, they're just not going to be producing that vehicle anymore because it wasn't selling. Allegedly, there's going to be something else that will be going there, but we don't know that yet. And we're in a situation of we'll believe it once it happens and once it lasts. So the government of Canada has decided that it was going to put limits on the number of cars those two companies manufacture in the United States that could be sold in Canada before some type of tariff is going to apply. We are doing what Ronald Reagan is doing in that video. We had an agreement, and the other party is not living up to that agreement. So we are imposing a strategic surgical tariff on GM and Stellantis because they're not honoring a contract with us. We didn't suddenly declare vehicles from Stellantis and GM to be national security threats and then impose a tariff or counter tariff. Very interesting. According to Ashley Burke of CBC News, the federal government is firing back at Stellantis and General Motors and cutting the number of tariff-free vehicles the automakers can import from the US to sell in Canada. As CBC News first reported, the two multinational manufacturers will no longer be exempt from paying Canada's retaliatory tariffs on many US assembled vehicles as before. On as many US assembled vehicles as before. The move is an attempt to put pressure on the companies to reinvest in Canadian production and workers to get this benefit back and avoiding a big tariff bill. Quote, this action follows the automakers' unacceptable decision to scale back their manufacturing presence in Canada, directly breaching their commitments to the country and Canadian workers, the government said in a late-night media release. Ottawa is taking action after Stellantis announced its plan to expand in the U.S., including moving its production of the Jeep Compass in Brampton, Ontario, to Illinois. General Motors also confirmed Tuesday that it was ending production of its Bright Drop electric delivery vans at a plant in Ingersoll, Ontario, due to demand. In April, the federal government offered auto company exemptions from Canada's 25% retaliatory tariffs on the American auto sector, but that benefit came with strings attached. The automakers had to continue making vehicles in Canada and complete the investments they'd already planned. If companies broke that condition, the government warned it would reduce how many tariff-free vehicles they could import from the US. So this was planned beforehand. This was in the initial terms of the contract, and I'm guessing that these were contracts that were established by the then Trudeau government. Huh. Good move. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne and Industry Minister Mélanie Joly released a joint statement saying Stellantis and GM have contravened their legal obligations to Canada. The ministers announced that effective immediately, the government is lowering the amounts of American assembled vehicles GM can import tariff-free by 24% and cutting Stellantis' amount by 50%. Quote, I think Canadians and the industry want the government to be tough on companies that don't own up to those partnerships that in many cases have been worth billions, said Flavio Volpe, president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Quote, this is a great move. Again, credit to Carney for doing it, but credit to Prime Minister Trudeau for actually ensuring that it was in the contract. But Hugh Williams, national spokesperson for the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association, says the government's response will hurt Canadian consumers. Quote, the price of vehicles are going to go up the more you have tariffs, Williams said. Quote, we've been clear with this government that when your trading partner shoots you in the foot, it's not a good idea to pull out another gun and shoot yourself in the other foot. Yes, that is true that would raise, but then that makes it such that perhaps Canadians, given that we don't like, we're on this whole not buy American, but we make exceptions. We do make, we have been making some exceptions for some Americans who do things right or do right by us. For example, American companies that do have bottling or production plants here in Canada that have kept them here, right? But we've also been good at avoiding going to the United States and basically boycotting a whole other thing, a lot of things. There's nothing that says that Canadians just won't take it upon themselves, and with especially this help with those two cars being a little more expensive, to just buy more of other cars that are assembled in Canada. If Canadians decided that we're just not going to buy cars assembled in the United States anymore, because if the United States doesn't want our cars, then maybe we don't want theirs. You know, this making certain models more expensive than the others might encourage people. Hey, you could buy a Stellantis or you could buy a nice Toyota assembled here in Canada. What do you say? I think Canadians would be down for that. Unifor National President Lana Payne says she thinks Ottawa's carrot and stick approach will work. Payne said U.S. President Donald Trump is playing hardball right now and extorting corporations to try to move production to the U.S. Quote, he's doing everything he can to surgically destroy our industrial economy in Canada, including the auto industry, Payne told CBC's Power and Politics. If we don't push back hard against him and against these companies, we're going to lose it all. Joly has also threatened legal action against Stellantis and noting the government gave it millions of dollars contingent on the company keeping its Canadian footprint. She posted on social media Thursday she met with GM, the Ontario government, and the union to talk about next steps for workers and that she expects an update in 15 days. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has threatened to sue GM if it breaches its contract and doesn't find a new product for the Ingersoll plant. Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Thursday that while GM indicated it would honor its obligations to pay workers, that's not enough. Quote, we're not satisfied with that, he said. At an announcement with Ford, Carney said they are working on figuring out what else can be done with the GM plant and if it could be part of Canada's upcoming defense industrial strategy. Carney has been working on a plan to pivot Canada away from over-reliance on the U.S. Carney also pointed to ongoing talks with the Trump administration to try to get some sectors relief from being pummeled by American tariffs. The Prime Minister warned that if Canada doesn't make progress on those talks, the government will do what's necessary to protect our workers. Quote, it starts with building, taking the control there, but it's also not having unfair access to our market if we don't have access to another market, Carney said. We're not at that point. Well, we may be now. Trump has signaled he wants to dominate auto manufacturing. The White House has been hitting Canada's auto sector with a 25% tariff on all finished vehicles that aren't compliant with the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told an audience in Toronto this month he wants to drain auto assembly from Canada. Canada has been in talks with the U.S. to try to lower tariffs on the auto sector, but Carney suggested on Thursday those negotiations in Washington are now forced on trying to get relief from the steel and aluminium sectors first hit hard by Trump's levies. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took aim at Carney on Thursday morning, saying he's broken his promise to negotiate a win with Trump and to protect Canada's auto sector. Yawn, click goodbye. Stellantis and GM have not yet responded to requests for comments from CBC News. So, that quote from Mark Carney, and I seem to have gone fuzzy. Ugh. Tech is not liking me this week. All right. And I threw myself off again. What I was going to say, I'm having trouble focusing today. So yes, in that yesterday, there was also an announcement at about the Darlington small nuclear reactors and those types of projects, one of the first major projects on the list, and that it was going to get some funding. And it was during that press conference that Mark Carney was asked about certain things with regard to trade with the United States, and was making the point in his answer that, how would I put it? Just because we had removed counter tariffs at this point doesn't mean that counter tariffs were forever eliminated from the toolbox of things that we could use. In there, he was saying that if we do get to a point where the United States is gaining access to our markets, but we are not having commensurate free access to their market, then we do have tools we can use. And it would be a good opportunity at that point for additional tariffs to come into place. So that type of answer for those who like to comment about where people's elbows are at any point in time, or whether or not they've had them surgically removed or not, as Pierre Poilievre once wanted to suggest. We got the message in that answer that the Prime Minister has no problem slapping on retaliatory tariffs if they do become necessary. But, he didn't say, thinking that we are not at that point right now. So right here from that press conference, I have the clip of the Prime Minister saying that, the comment with fuller context and in his voice. So here it is for you.
Yeah, I will echo that. We are on the same page. We speak regularly, as I do with the other premiers. For example, I'm speaking with Premier Legault, Premier Ministre Legault, later today. First point. Secondly, where we are focused is getting the best deal for Canadian workers. We will always stand up for Canadian workers. Now, in the situation we're in right now with the United States, with the negotiations we're having with the United States, is we're having very detailed, specific, constructive negotiations for the steel industry, the aluminum industry. There's elements of the energy industry, a few other components in there, because the Americans are moving to an approach which is sector by sector as opposed to global. And the Premier and I and the other premiers were very conscious that there will be a review of our overall agreement, the CUSMA agreement with the U.S. and Mexico, that's coming up in a few months' time, and so broader aspects will be brought there. But let's be clear about, if we ultimately don't make progress in these various sectors, we're going to do what's necessary to protect our workers. And part of that is building. Starts with building, taking the control there. But it's also not having unfair access to our market if we don't have access to another market. We're not at that point, but we'll do what's right in lockstep together. Thank you.
Next.
So there you have it, kids and cubs. Prime Minister making it rather clear that he has no problem using elbows when the time comes, should the time come. And like I said, that's after the announcement of the enacting of this clause of the agreement that the government is going to that the government had entered into with Stellantis and GM. So going back to the original article, there's a big aside in there because the article presented an opportunity, but about the ad with Doug Ford. Carney met with Trump earlier this month to try to ease trade tensions as the two countries and Mexico prepare for a review of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, a trade deal Trump negotiated in his first term but has since soured on. More than 3/4 of Canadian exports go to the U.S. and nearly $3.6 billion Canadian worth of goods and services cross the border daily. In his own post on X last week, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, posted a link to the ad and the message, quote, "It's official. Ontario's new advertising campaign in the U.S. has launched." He continued, "Using every tool we have, we'll never stop making the case against American tariffs on Canada. The way to prosperity is by working together." Unfortunately, Doug Ford, in that announcement about what was going on in Darlington, again was doing that thing. Hey, there's nobody I would love to sell our excess energy more to than the United States, so that we can do this Fortress Can-Am stuff. And he's still trying to sell the concept to the United States that there's some type of Fortress Can-Am when the United States wants to isolate itself. This is Doug, for the millionth time, when somebody tells you they want to snap your neck, the appropriate response isn't to seek to cuddle and snuggle more closely into their arms. Stop it with the Fortress Can-Am stuff. It's not working. Fetch is not happening. Hey. Trump said earlier this week that he had seen the ad on television and said that it showed that his tariffs were having an impact. "I saw an ad last night from Canada. If I was Canada, I'd take that same ad also," he said then. So he's on the record as saying, yeah, that's something I would do too, but all of a sudden now he's offended. The president has moved to impose steep U.S. tariffs on many goods from Canada. In April, Canada's government imposed retaliatory levies on certain U.S. goods, but it carved out exceptions for some automakers to bring specific numbers of vehicles into the country, known as remission quotas. Trump's tariffs have especially hurt Canada's auto sector, much of which is based in Ontario. This month, Stellantis said it would move a production line from Ontario to Illinois. So that was the Toronto Star article on that. And let's take a look quickly at the CBC one to see if there's anything different, because this one is only as of 25 minutes ago, so it might have more recent information. This is Mike Crawley, and the article is titled Trump Claims Canada Cheated and Got Caught. Really? With Ontario tariff ad and calls off trade. U.S. President Donald Trump says he is terminating all trade negotiations with Canada over an advertisement by the Ontario government that uses the late U.S. President Ronald Reagan's own words to send an anti-tariff message to American audiences. In a late-night post to his Truth Social platform, Trump attacked the ad, which he attributed to Canada rather than Ontario, as fraudulent and fake. Then they cite the entire tweet there. In a later post on Friday morning, Trump claimed Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security, he wrote. Canada has long cheated on tariffs, charging our farmers as much as 400%. He's back on that. Now they and other countries can't take advantage of the U.S. any longer. Somebody needs a distraction from the fact he got caught destroying the east wing of the White House. Just 2 weeks ago, after Prime Minister Mark Carney visited the White House, Trump directed 2 senior members of his cabinet to get a deal with Canada on steel, aluminium, and energy. CBC News has asked the Prime Minister's office for comment but has not received a response. Ottawa was informed of Trump's decision to scrap the talks shortly before he posted on social media, a senior federal government source told Radio-Canada late Thursday. The ad that prompted Trump's sudden cancellation of the talks comes from Ontario Premier Doug Ford's government. It contains a minute-long excerpt from the then-President Reagan's April 1987 radio address about free trade. And then it quotes part of what Reagan said there. Trump had seen the ad earlier in the week and did not respond so virulently. Quote, I even see foreign countries now that are doing very well with tariffs taking ads. Don't go with tariffs, Trump told a gathering of Republicans at a White House on Tuesday. I saw an ad last night from Canada. If I was Canada, I'd take that same ad also, Trump. But I do believe that everybody's too smart for that. A few hours before Trump's late-night post that said he would be terminating trade talks, the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation Institute also took issue with the ad. That's when the tweet that claimed that everything was fraudulent. And since we're showing and telling, let's show and tell. There it is. So I put this. This is what they said. Listen to President's unedited remarks. This was the link to the video I showed you. And this is how they put it here. All right. Continuing on with the content of the article. The Institute said that it was reviewing its legal options in the matter. A spokesperson for Ford says the Ontario government did nothing wrong. Like I said, if permission was needed, then one would check. But there was kids here and the chat that said that permission wasn't needed. And if permission was needed, then I would assume that the Ronald Reagan Foundation is also going to sue the Midas Touch guys because they used a clip of it too. It would seem that this is... the argument would be that this is public domain and therefore there are no rights. So we'll see. Quote, the commercial uses an unedited excerpt from one of President Reagan's public addresses, which is available through public domain, says the spokesperson in an email to CBC News. Reagan knew and spoke directly to Americans that tariffs hurt the U.S. economy, workers, and families. He was a strong supporter of free and fair trade between Canada and America, the spokesperson said. Ontario is spending $75 million on the campaign with plans to air the ads on such networks as Fox News, Fox Sports, Newsmax, Bloomberg, NBC, CBS, and ABC. The ad has already been spotted on stations in the Washington, D.C. area, including during Game 7 of the American League Championship Series, which was won by the Toronto Blue Jays. The talks that Trump abruptly canceled have been ongoing for the past 2 weeks in Washington following the Carney-Trump meeting in the Oval Office of October 7th. As recently as Wednesday, a spokesperson for Canada, U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc described the negotiations as making progress. Quote, Minister LeBlanc continues to engage with senior U.S. officials as working towards an agreement with the United States is his top priority, said LeBlanc's press secretary Gabriel Brunet in an email to CBC News. Brunet said LeBlanc's objective is to build on the progress made until the agreement is reached that is in the best interests of Canadian workers and businesses. In his social media post, Trump claimed the anti-tariff ad campaign is designed, quote, to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. The court is scheduled to hear arguments next month into Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose broad-based tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and dozens of other countries around the world. And this claim by Trump is all the more nonsensical because if that was the case, there would have needed to be something in the ad stating specifically something against the use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose broad-based tariffs. And this was just an ad about tariffs, period, regardless of how they were imposed. This is not the first time one of Ford's tactics in the trade war with the U.S. has drawn the ire of the Trump administration. Ford's move to slap a surcharge on Ontario electricity exports to U.S. states in March prompted Trump to threaten to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium exports to 50%, which he's done anyway. He just found another reason. Ontario withdrew its surcharge a day later, and Trump backed off on his threat, keeping the tariffs at 25%. He ultimately boosted them to 50% in June. Pardon me, I have to cough. Thank you for your indulgence there, kits and cubs. So yeah, how long did that buy us? March to June, April, May, June. So we bought ourselves about 3 months of not having those tariffs on steel and aluminium raised to 50% by Doug Ford reducing that threat. And then Donald Trump just found another way to do what he was going to do anyway. So there you go. Yeah. So clearly, it wasn't that he just saw the ad and it pissed him off. It wasn't that somebody on his team just brought it to his attention because he's been talking about it before. It's just that sometime yesterday he decided because of the Ronald Reagan Foundation alleged this. Now, again, whether or not a phone call was placed to the Ronald Reagan Foundation telling them to allege this so that Trump would have a pretext to do this, because, again, he needs a diversion, and as we keep on stating on the show, Canada is his favorite punching bag. So, yeah. Indeed. Oh, boy. Jeez. Yeah. I don't know what the next move is, but President Trump and Prime Minister Carney are probably going to be meeting at the sidelines of these ASEAN summits. I guess something could happen at that point. Who knows? A little flattery. Maybe a case of Diet Cokes. I don't know. Gee, or I don't know. Again, like at this point, I don't know. I can't imagine being in the prime minister's office or on the trade negotiating team and getting that last night, and it's just sort of like just wanting to bump your head on the desk and going like, what the fuck? Like, seriously, what the fuck? Like, oh my word. All right. Let's see. Uncover said that said to me something with regard to Doug Ford's reaction. Yes. Okay. And I'm going to hear that Doug Ford is going to, well, because my personal view is that when Doug Ford did that whole thing, oh my God, it felt like being stabbed in the heart or something by a friend. Like when Trump proposed the tariffs, because Doug Ford was on the record as being a Republican and whatnot, I thought for sure that Doug Ford really wanted an invite to the Trump family Thanksgiving dinner so he could bring his cherry cheesecake there and make new friends, rich friends, developer friends, Just saying. That's why, despite all the Captain Canada tough talk, we need to hit back hard. Oh my God, this Trump guy just drives me crazy. But he keeps on talking about, hey, let's build Fortress Can-Am together. And there's nobody I would like to sell our electricity more than our good friends in the United States. So I'm going to guess that there's some of this good friends and, stuff in here. And if not, I will be surprised. But kits and cubs, let's see. Just 34 seconds here of Doug Ford's reaction.
I heard that the president heard our ad. I'm sure he wasn't too happy, but it's real because it was coming from the best president the country's ever seen, Ronald Reagan. So it is. It's very effective. It's probably one of the best ads I've ever seen, and it's coming from Ronald Reagan's voice, and it's going to be focused right across the country, but also in Republican-held areas. Because what I feel, the Reagan Republicans are going to be fighting with a MAGA group. And let's hope Reagan Republicans win. I heard...
Okay. Interesting there. I'm not sure that the proper response... listen, what he's saying in there is not necessarily untrue. I'm just not sure that the proper response is to go to the camera and say that Ronald Reagan was the best president the United States ever had, to the most fragile ego in all of the universe. I'm sure that's going to hit hard. And then to say, that there is a civil war between the two, and let's hope that the other side wins. That's probably not going to curry any favor. If Donald Trump was pissed off because of the ad, allegedly, those two statements in that little clip will certainly piss him off more. So Doug Ford is doing nice nasty there. He's saying some nice things, but they're very, very nasty towards Donald Trump specifically. And, well, there you go. According to City TV News, breaking 8:27 a.m., 7 minutes ago. Ford stresses U.S.-Canada friendship after Trump accuses Ottawa of cheating on tariffs. Ontario Premier Doug Ford moved quickly Friday to emphasize the strength of Canada's relationship with the United States, responding to a blistering post from U.S. President Donald Trump that accused the country of fraud and trade manipulation. Quote, Canada and the United States are friends, neighbors, and allies. There we go. President Ronald Reagan knew that we are stronger together, Ford wrote in a statement shared to X. He added, God bless Canada and God bless God. Fuck, sorry. I hate it when Doug Ford says that. Just trying so hard to be Republican. To underscore his message, Ford uploaded video of Reagan's address. Okay, that would be interesting. Ford's tone contrasted sharply with Trump's remarks in a lengthy post. The president alleged that Canada had fraudulently purchased ads misrepresenting Reagan's view on tariffs, claiming the former president loved tariffs for a country and its national security. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so that's basically it. It's just basically Ford saying, oh yeah, don't worry, we're friends, we're stronger together. Doug, Donald is never going to love you in the way that you need him to. You're embarrassing yourself. Just stop, please. It's hard to watch you. Okay, good talk. Ay. My God, we are living in the wildest timeline, aren't we? My God. Kit Uncover wants me to scroll up on the DMs. All right. I will scroll up on the... What else am I supposed to see here? I don't see anything at the moment. No. Okay. Maybe I caught it already. But yeah. Wow. Wow. All right. So yeah, there we go. The trade talks are off for now, according to Trump. We'll see whether or not Prime Minister Mark Carney can work some type of magic when they're in Asia to get them back on. And we will see as well. We have some retaliatory tariffs in terms of remission. I can't remember. I closed the article, but those limits anyway on the amount of vehicles from Stellantis and GM that will be able to be admitted in Canada tariff free. So those two moves are in place, and we will see what happens next. The only thing that's interesting about this, and I believe it was Kit Grace that mentioned it in the chat earlier, is that now the fault for the talks not happening is not the fault of Mark Carney, which is going to put Pierre Poilievre in a really interesting situation. For one, now, of course, there's no love lost between the Pierre Poilievre camp and the Doug Ford camp. So I would not be surprised if we see something from the Pierre Poilievre side lambasting Doug Ford and trying to take him down a peg because Pierre is probably afraid that Doug really wants his job. So this would be a good opportunity to get the knees out from someone. And we know that Pierre as well. He's ruthless, and Pierre definitely has no qualms about playing dirty. So I have a feeling that this will be used, but also Ontarians, those of you who are really tired of Doug Ford, but don't have some palatable alternatives to him in the other parties, and who may need an extra reason to think, you know what, maybe it's time to let this guy go. The fact that Doug keeps on freelancing as bad cop and keeps on making decisions that keep on ending up with things like this happening might be a reason for public opinion to finally turn on this guy. Still doesn't solve the problem of not having very attractive alternative options to him, but at least the Ontario Liberals are working on that. The Ontario NDP do not seem to be working on that at the moment. Stay tuned. But yes, right now, one can, the way that this went down, one can all say it's all Doug's fault now. Mark Carney must be the happiest person in some ways. It's going to be interesting to see if Pierre decides to go all in attacking Doug, or whether or not Pierre tries to find a way to make this Carney's fault somehow. Well, you guys had a sleepover once. Oh my God. Wow. All right. Let's go into some other stuff because, as we had mentioned, Darlington, there was a big announcement there yesterday, and definitely some news we want to take care of because this is news that certainly did not make Pierre Poilievre happy at all. Because Pierre Poilievre, his line was, "Well, all they've got is a list." Well, it seems we got a little more than a list now. Seems that we've got something moving from the list to becoming a little more real and actually having some money behind it. According to Ethan Lang of CBC News, Ontario and the federal government are spending a collective $3 billion to build Canada's first small new modular reactors, a new nuclear energy technology to be built next door to the Darlington power plant. Prime Minister Mark Carney, who joined Premier Doug Ford in Bowmanville Thursday to announce the new spending, said he has added the Darlington new nuclear project to his list of projects deemed to be in the national interest and therefore worthy of fast-tracking. To help build the first of 4 small modular reactors near to Darlington's nuclear station, the province will spend $1 billion through the Building Ontario Fund, while Ottawa will spend $2 billion through the Canada Growth Fund, Carney said. Quote, "We are an energy superpower and we are only getting stronger. This project will make us the first in the G7 to have an entirely new kind of nuclear reactor," he said. "It is a generational investment, an investment that will extend Canada's world leadership in clean energy." Earlier this year, the Ford government gave Ontario Power Generation, OPG, the green light to start construction on the project's first small modular reactor, SMR. The total project cost was announced at the time as $20.9 billion, with the estimated construction cost of the initial reactor being $7.7 billion. When completed, the 4 SMRs will produce 1,200 megawatts of electricity, or enough to power 1.2 million homes, Carney said. The province's electricity system operator recently estimated that demand for power across Ontario is set to increase 75% by 2050. Ford told reporters the project will make Ontario's economy more competitive, resilient, and self-reliant in the face of U.S. tariffs. The project will create 18,000 jobs during construction and sustain 3,700 jobs annually over the next 65 years, he said. Ford stressed that the province is also using, quote, "Ontario's products at every opportunity so that the Ontario tax dollars support Ontario workers." With tariffs and economic uncertainty hammering Ontario's workers and businesses, this is exactly the sort of investment our province needs, he said, adding that his government is also looking to expand Ontario's nuclear energy capacity in other parts of the province. Carney said the SMRs will inject $500 million annually into the Canadian supply chain, while construction, operation, and maintenance of the 4 units will add more than $38 billion to Canada's GDP over the next 65 years. When the project was announced earlier this year, no taxpayer money was allotted to build the project. It was announced then that OPG would finance the construction cost through a combination of cash on hand and taking on debt, recovering the cost over the lifetime of the project by charging ratepayers for electricity. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission granted OPG a license to construct the first of the 4 SMRs earlier this year. Work started in May and is expected to come online in 2030, according to the province. In a briefing earlier this year, Ministry of Energy and Mines officials told reporters that roughly 80% of the SMR project spending will go to Ontario companies, another 15% to European and Asian firms, and just 5% to companies in the US, primarily for GE Hitachi's design and development of the power plant model called the BWRX 300. Ontario would become the first place in the world to build the BWRX 300, which is a smaller version of GE Hitachi's existing boiling water reactor technology. And as the Prime Minister had made known in his comments when he had delivered his speech in Bowmanville, he talked about the fact that we were the first means that we not only have the additional electricity that wouldn't be being used at any given time to export, but that we would have all the intellectual property and intellectual knowledge with regard to bringing this type of system online and and operating it and that type of stuff, and that is something that could also have economic benefits for Canada. So again, in this particular case, um, you see the multi-layering in this project. So we have the actual project and what it will do. We have the fact that the project is going to use Ontario resources. So that's another plank. They are probably jobs, as the Prime Minister stated in his address the other night, that they're going to be union jobs that will be around for a while and well paid, and that people can make an actual career out of. So that is interesting there as well. And then, of course, it's nuclear energy, which has the greener component to it with regard to electricity generation. Of course, there's all the issues of how you dispose of the waste, but in terms of the generation itself, and then layered onto that, the fact that it's also an intellectual property play that we can also use and gain some benefit from. So, yeah, lots of elements of the overall plan being hit with this specific project. And now the project is having some money put behind it as well. And hopefully that will draw more capital investment to it. So, Pierre, probably not happy about this announcement because it shows things working. Now, Pierre always tries to diminish this one by the fact that, of course, some groundwork had already been started on this before, but this is a project that's not due to come online before 2030. So, it's definitely not something that is, one step or two steps away from being complete. And then the prime minister can say, I did that. Um, right? Yes, this project was underway, but this definitely gives it a boost. Definitely gives it a boost and makes it more credible at this point. All right. So that is a positive announcement. Things that are working. The plan has been laid out, and there are elements of it that are falling into place. And I like to see that very much. Another gentle correction I'm going to issue on myself, and it comes from Kit Elaine, because yesterday I was mentioning another project that had gotten started. We had been talking about building more homes in the small modular homes, and I mentioned that there were 9 homes that were planned for Nunavut. And it seems that Kit Elaine made the comment in the chat twice, but I missed it. But she reached me through another method and stated the 9 modular homes for Nunavut arrived in September and should be move-in ready at the beginning of November. So again, pardon me, I didn't have time to reach for the cough button in time for that, but I have to do it again. So so there you go. Pierre Poilievre will diminish this as, oh my God, I can't believe we spent $13.5 billion for just 9 houses. He will do that, I guess, and it will be continuing to diminish every single little achievement along the way until there are so many homes built that it is undeniable that this is working. But Pierre will diminish each individual announcement. But again, it's going to show that in the most remote parts of Canada, some of the places where it's hardest to build, hardest to get things to, is 9 homes are going to be there. This, and it's the start of something. Again, it's not going to take 5 years to get the first house delivered, and we're only going to have a bureaucracy. Build Canada Homes has been established. There are 9 modular homes that are going to be move-in ready in November. And we mentioned as well in Nova Scotia. Oh God, somebody will be able to remind me where it is. That project is also starting. Oh, come on, Nova Scotia. Looking for it now. I think it starts with a D, if I'm remembering correctly. But yes, no, can't find it off the top of my head. I know that Kitsasi, in Dartmouth. Yes, I believe it's in Dartmouth. $9 million in new affordable housing coming up over there. So again, more of these announcements that keep coming, and hopefully the zone gets flooded with these bits of good news rather than Pierre Poilievre sanctioned misinformation. Yes, thank you, Kit Elaine. There you go. I mentioned thank you for having my back there. The other thing that happened yesterday is that Sean Fraser had been had dropped. Sean Fraser dropped that Justice beat, tabled the bail reform bill, and while doing that, of course, he went around and did the press tour, as is usually required when you're tabling new legislation. And there were some very interesting things he was saying uh, during that period of going around to all the networks, and I think he got everyone. He got CPAC, he got CTV because he was on Power Play, he was on CBC's Power and Politics, and I saw all 3 interviews, and he did this. Uh, so it's very good that he did these things. Um, One of the things I mentioned with regard to these bills is that especially with bail, because there's two issues, right? There's the federal law, right? Everything doing concerning the criminal code, and that's federal purview, and that administration of justice, for the most part, is a provincial responsibility. So both of them have roles to play. If you're going to reform bail, if you're going to strengthen provisions and all that type of stuff, they both have a role to play, but they both have their own fields of competence, right? And therefore, one should not be interfering in the others. So, one of the comments I've been making is that the federal government, once it does this part, really needs to add to its communications. Well, we've done our part, right? Now it's up to the provinces to do theirs to ensure that there's the capacity, because, all the good law in the world doesn't mean squat if it can't be enforced and it can't be used to its most effective extent. So, with that, we have the Justice Minister here granting an interview with CPAC. And I want you to hear it because I believe that what I had suggested is precisely they are not doing it as aggressively and as sharply as I would. I would really make the contrast, but it is definitely in there.
And bail reforms introduced today. We're now joined by the Justice Minister and the Attorney General of Canada, Sean Fraser. Minister, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So listen, let's begin with what we just heard from Pierre Poilievre, because he essentially criticizes this bill for leaving in place, leaving untouched this principle of restraint, and essentially that's the legal principle that says that you should use the least severe measure to deal and to figure out things like releasing an accused or sentencing. Why did you not address that principle and do away with it altogether?
Well, first, I think it is essential to point out what this bill does do. It makes it harder for people to be released in the community if they are a violent repeat offender, and if you've committed a serious crime, you're going to face stiffer penalties as a result of the law we put in place. What Mr. Poilievre's point completely fails to understand is that if you were to repeal a section of the code that mentioned the principle of restraint, it wouldn't necessarily make a difference, because that principle comes from the Supreme Court of Canada, not initially from the criminal code. If we want to have an impact on how that principle is interpreted, we should actually clarify what it means in the code. So we've taken the approach of actually explaining that the principle of restraint is not some get out of jail free card. Instead, it's going to mandate that someone actually be detained if the court is not satisfied that they can protect public safety if the person is released. This is a more responsible approach, and frankly, it reflects a lot of the feedback that we've heard from law enforcement, from provinces, both of whom have endorsed this bill after it's become public earlier today.
Okay, and what you are leaning in on is this reverse onus for one, which essentially takes away from the Crown the obligation to prove why a person should not get bail, puts it on the accused to make the arguments as to why they deserve bail. At the end of the day, will that, do you believe, keep more people in custody, in particular repeat and violent offenders?
It will have an impact, we expect, as a result of the change to the rule, because it's not just placing the burden on the accused who may be a repeat violent offender to explain why they should be released. It's also, we've accepted a recommendation, worked very closely with my counterpart in Ontario, Attorney General Doug Downey, to introduce an additional factor that would require that person actually present credible information that clearly demonstrates how the public safety imperative could be protected if they are released. We do anticipate this is going to make it more difficult for violent repeat offenders to be released into community, certainly.
Okay, now part of this is to prove to the Canadian public on behalf of your government that you are serious about crime, serious about making Canadian streets safe again. So if you're already expanding reverse onus to things like violent auto theft, repeat violent offenders, organized retail theft, human trafficking, sexual assault, and extortion involving violence, why not just apply reverse onus on everything across the board?
Well, we wanted to start with some of the most serious offenses, and there are some reverse onuses that pre-existed this particular bill that exists within the criminal code. But we wanted to target the offenses that we heard were the biggest priority items for our partners who either work within the system or who have a responsibility to manage the system. Law enforcement has been pretty clear with us that we needed to embrace reverse onuses for certain kinds of the offenses that you've seen. Provincial governments, who are closer to the administration of justice given their responsibility for bail hearings as the administration of provincial courts, etc., have asked specifically for certain of these offences to be included. When the people who work in the system and who manage the system tell you there are changes that need to be made to promote public safety, we would do well to listen to them. This has been one of the most collaborative exercises that I've been involved with in 10 years in politics, and I believe that level of collaboration has strengthened the final product that we've tabled in the House earlier today.
Okay, you use the word collaboration, and in the release that was given out by your ministry, you note the fact that these changes to the criminal code will only really be effective if provincial and territorial jurisdictions, governments do their part. What are you referencing there? Like a sufficient number of provincial judges, enough jails and holding cells in the provinces and territories? What exactly do you mean by that?
So let me start by saying this is not some exercise in pointing fingers. The provinces get it. They have been on this. They are great partners to work with. In the meeting that we had in Alberta last week with every province's justice and public safety ministers, really signaled to me that we all want to pull in the same direction and have a Team Canada approach. What I mean when I refer to the provinces needing to do their part as well reflects the breakdown of responsibilities in terms of who has the responsibility to manage the text of the criminal code, which is clearly a federal responsibility, and who has the responsibility for the administration of justice, which typically falls to the provinces. When you look to different regions of Canada, the challenges are not necessarily identical. In some provinces, there are challenges with detention capacity. In others, there are challenges with the shortage or level of training of decision makers. In other provinces, community policing is implemented at variable levels. One of the things that this entire exercise has really brought to the fore is the opportunity to collaborate not just between federal governments and provincial governments, but to have all of us work together to share best practices, to share data, to improve the collection of data, and to ensure that we understand what measures are actually having an impact, whether it's the text of the code or the resources that allow provinces to adequately implement the text of the code. This has to be a collaborative effort. The entire system is designed that way, and if we're going to see success follow the tabling of the legislation today, we have to make sure that other levels of government properly equip the system that will allow these measures to take hold and have a positive impact on public safety.
Are they ready to play their part? Because if it takes two to tango, you essentially said we've set the law, we're now going to see how well it's implemented.
So provinces have been doing different things to strengthen their ability to manage the bail system in recent months. Again, different provinces have taken different approaches. It's clear that they all want to do something here. This is going to demand continued and unrelenting focus on adequately resourcing the system if they want to see results from the changes that we made today in terms of how it impacts communities. Typically, when you have changes, you see the results improve over a period of time. As you have new laws in effect, you understand the implications of those laws, and we'll need to continue to iterate, potentially at a federal level with future amendments to the criminal code. We have more coming this fall, but also at a provincial level to ensure that they can manage and shift those resources appropriately to respond to different pressure points in the system.
And what type of support is your government willing to give to the provinces and territories to make sure they can do that? And I wonder, is that information? Is that education? Is that funding?
So it started with responding to the feedback that they participate in the process of identifying potential changes to the criminal code. Today, I think will be a reflection of that extraordinary collaborative effort that we engaged on provinces and with law enforcement to develop. What comes next will be the source of much discussion between our counterparts. Having met with my counterparts last week in Alberta, it's very clear that there is a joint desire to work on some sort of a framework to improve community safety more broadly. There are areas of federal jurisdiction that are at play. We want to start there. We want to make sure we clean up our own backyard before we start telling everybody else what they need to do. We started today with the criminal code reforms. There are ongoing conversations about the complement of judges that engages federal responsibilities. There may be areas where we can help inspire collaboration as between provinces or as between the federal and provincial governments. But there's no question, this is not purely for the federal government to solve. It's for us to be a good partner and to work with the provinces to understand what their needs are, but it's also for provinces to make sure that they adequately resource the system that they have the responsibility to manage. And we're going to continue to be a good partner.
So more to come.
Obviously, and always.
Sean Fraser, thank you for the time.
Thank you so much.
So there, kids and cubs, lots of interesting elements in that. You notice that, like I said, making very clear that they have the role to play, but sharp, right? Saying that, it was a very collaborative process. It's not pointing fingers. It's more just, there are areas of jurisdiction, and those things are there. Seeming to make it clear that there is not necessarily going to be any additional funding for this. That it's up for the provinces and territories to revise their priorities in order to make this a priority here. One thing about this that I found interesting when he's talking about all these processes to getting together, and it's time to share best practices and all that kind of stuff. So this creates an opportunity for it. I get tired of hearing that because, God damn it, it's 2025. If you aren't sharing best practices already, what the hell are you doing? If you're not equipped to be doing that, I mean, this is not a new lesson now, right? If you're not sharing data and you aren't equipped to share best practices, what are you doing? Where are you? Come on. These concepts should be ingrained and embedded by now. There is no excuse for starting any type of program where you're not collecting data, sharing data, or best practices in 2025. Like, come on, let's get on with it. But the one thing that Mr. Fraser did not do in all three interviews is when he was asked about the principle of restraint, is actually speak to it other than mention that it was coming from a Supreme Court decision. But what is the principle of restraint? Why is it important? Why does it matter? Why do we want to preserve it? So I looked a little bit into that, and I found something that was on the Government of Canada website. This is from uh, Patrick Healy, who is a person who specializes in matters of criminal law, including procedure, evidence, sentencing, comparative criminal law, and international criminal law. Teaches these subjects at McGill University, Montreal, and has published widely on many topics related to them. And this was in a text written for the Department of Justice Canada's International Cooperation Group as part of the group's activities in Ukraine. But in there, when he is talking about the concept of restraint in the criminal law, and for some reason, I had the quote and it has disappeared on me because, again, tech is hating me today for some reason. Yep, it's just vanished. Oh, that is why, because it opened a footnote page. And it went away from the article. Well, that now makes sense. All right, so here it says, a primary question concerning the scope of the criminal law is whether it is appropriate response to identifiable social concerns. Thus, one question that must be asked is whether the criminal law has a place in resolving social issues. In abstract terms, a state that is committed to observing a principle of restraint will be reluctant to invoke the coercive measures of criminal law unless and until it is apparent that no other response is appropriate or adequate. There are obviously forms of conduct that leave little room for doubt or controversy on this point, including violence against the person, damage to property, and serious offenses against the state. Arson, treason, robbery, theft, and culpable homicide are forms of conduct that, without question, will justify the use of criminal sanctions. At the same time, however, it must be acknowledged that the criminal law lies in a field of conflicting values, and indeed that the criminal law itself is a field of conflicting values. Thus, a commitment to restraint forces the question whether criminal sanctions are necessary to address the form of social conduct contemplated by responsible decision makers. If the value of restraint has some guiding importance in the formulation of public laws, it would suggest that the criminal law should be invoked only in the last resort when other responses would be inadequate. Of course, the matter is not a simple one, since the question of the threshold of criminality is one upon which reasonable people can disagree vigorously. For example, while most might agree that littering is misconduct that might warrant penal regulation, few would argue that it should be a criminal offense. Yet most people would also agree that grave instances of environmental degradation, especially those demonstrating an element of fault of Yet more people would also agree that grave instances of environmental degradation, especially those demonstrating an element of fault or culpability in conduct, do merit the criminal sanction. Between these two poles, there is ample scope for debate concerning the proper ambit of the criminal law. The principle of restraint, therefore, urges that the criminal law should be used when identifiable forms of behavior cause serious harm to the fabric of society, and conversely, that it should not be used when other responses are available and might be effective. It certainly implies that the criminal law should not be invoked for comparatively trivial nuisances. The point has both prospective and retrospective aspects. It has obvious relevance for the future creation of criminal laws in any state, but it also has retrospective application in the sense that the old and established laws of a state might not now be consistent with a society's commitment to restraint, proportionality, and the rule of law. On this basis, it might be said that new governing principles require that old laws be reviewed with the intention that any of them that cannot be reconciled with the new constitution of a state should be repealed or reformed so as to ensure consistency with current standards. So basically, here, the principle of restraint indicates that the criminal law should be used in an appropriately reasonable but humane manner. That prison should be a sanction of last resort, if one can make a case for it, but also means that the court should seek the least intrusive sentence and the least quantum, which will achieve the overall purpose of being an appropriate and just sanction. So, in other words, penalize to the point you need to criminalize in order to get what you need, but not more. And if incarceration, for example, is not required in order to get the change that you would require, that you would desire, then don't do it. Right? In some of the other interviews, it seems that the way that the law was written with regard to the principle of restraint was left to be open to interpretation and had been taken to the extreme in certain cases. The rewriting of the law based on the input of people out in the community dealing in the system, as Mr. Fraser as Minister Fraser has referred to in the interview, would indicate that part of that law dealing with restraint has been rewritten to make clear that the principle of restraint should be used in cases, of course, where it is appropriate. But if you have things like, for example, as mentioned here, arson and culpable murder and all that type of stuff, well, in that case, principle of restraint doesn't mean try to find any way possible to not put someone behind bars. It means, for the cases where it really is not required, do not seek it. And for cases where it's absolutely needed, in case of violent offenders, then don't use the principle of restraint to its to the point of the absurd, for all intents and purposes. But yes, in that he had in those interviews, he was not taking the opportunity to state specifically what it is, why it is the principle of restraint was indeed possible, not possible, but why it is desirable and what purposes it serves within the justice system. According to justice.gc.ca, so the Justice Department, when one asks it what the principle of restraint and how it is supposed to apply, the answer is the principle of restraint under section 493.1 is intended to ensure that release at the earliest opportunity is favored over detention where appropriate, and that only reasonably necessary bail conditions are imposed on an accused person. The principle of restraint is a guiding principle and does not dictate a specific outcome. This principle does not change the basis upon which someone can be detained at a bail hearing. The grounds for detention referred to under subsection 498.1.1 for police and subsection 515.10 for courts continue to apply, meaning that an accused still has to be detained if it is necessary to prevent flight, for the protection of the public, or to maintain confidence in the administration of justice. The principle of restraint is embedded within the structure of the existing bail provisions, which date back to the Bail Reform Act of 1972. The Supreme Court of Canada has mandated its application on many occasions, including the decisions of St. Cloud in 2015, Antic 2017, Myers 2019, and more recently Zora 2020. And when asked why the principle was legislated, the answer is because this is the part where Pierre Poilievre keeps on pointing. This is the thing that the Trudeau Liberals did that Pierre Poilievre says is the thing that has caused all this revolving door stuff. But as I just mentioned, it dates back to the Bail Reform Act of 1972, actually. But Pierre is complaining about this part specifically. When former Bill C-75 was introduced, there was information to suggest that bail conditions were being routinely imposed by both police and courts that were neither related to the offense nor consistent with the principles of bail. Minor bail breaches were diverting resources away from more serious offenses with disproportionate effects on Indigenous people and vulnerable populations. These issues were discussed in detail by the Standing Senate Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs in their comprehensive report, Delaying Justice is Denying Justice, from 2017. The principle of restraint responds directly to Recommendation 31 of that report, which called on the Minister of Justice to prioritize reducing the number of persons on remand across Canada. The reform has also codified common law principles set out in a series of Supreme Court decisions, the ones that I mentioned earlier, on bail. So, when we're talking about people on remand, these are people who have not been found guilty. They still have the presumption of innocence, right? So, unless they are indeed charged or suspected of serious offenses, then yes, of course, remand should stay. But we shouldn't remand people just for the sake of remanding them. So it seems that there were a lot of cases where we would find that the person charged was either Indigenous or from a vulnerable population. They won't only charge, or they didn't only have bail conditions that were specific, but extra ones were layered on to ensure that they would stay in jail when they probably were not necessary. So this principle, you don't eradicate it completely, because then you take away that protection from abuse, but you need to circumscribe it. Clearly, we needed to circumscribe it more in a more refined way, so that it could not be used for the in a perverse way to achieve an impact that was opposite than the one it had intended to be established for. And that is why it still remains in existence with that, and it hasn't been scrapped. So yes, Pierre Poilievre, the man who campaigned on being the first prime minister ever to use the notwithstanding clause and to use it against citizens to revoke their rights and keep them in jail, while at the same time talking about certain people and saying they need to come out in a box. Maybe that's why he has a problem with the principle of restraint and thinks that it's all Trudeau's fault, because the principle of restraint says that people should not be kept in jail any longer than they absolutely need to. And if they do not need to be there, then throwing extra bail conditions in order to make sure they get put there is a no-no. All right. I think Kids and Cubs, I think we have a show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. And sharing is caring. So please share our content. If you would like us to help you, Kits and Cubs, because you're on the go and you've got lots of things to do and sometimes you can't watch the show live, hey, thanks to the Ray Girl, we've got you covered. Just scan this QR code that's appeared and that will bring you to our pod page, podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver, with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there and click on subscribe, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, zip right to your favorite podcast feed. It's waiting for you. And hey, there you go. You can take us with you. We're portable and lightweight. Okay, Kits and Cubs, as well, if you would like to help us, then you can do that by surfing on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where you can click with our buttons like, share, and subscribe. Kit Cassie and Kit Lane would definitely approve. So when you click them, they help us with the algorithm, and it makes us happy to see our numbers go up. So thank you for that help. And if you would be so inclined to want to help us in other ways, we do have the Emergency Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund for you, if you would like to support our efforts and help us with the costs that we incur to create this show for you, kits and cups. We would definitely appreciate your help. So if you can help, please go to this QR code that just appeared, scan it, and or go to coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And there you can drop a loonie or two into our tip jar and say, add a beaver, add a grizzly. We really appreciate what you do. Keep it going. And that would make us very happy indeed, because a moist beaver is a happy beaver. Keep your beaver moist. I've been needing a lot of moisture this week with this cold. So thank you for all of your help. Of course, we have the super chat, and we have memberships on our YouTube page. And if you are buying Canadian, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is where you can send a direct transfer so you avoid the broligarchy, and 100% of your donation comes to us so we can do more with it. Thank you so very much. If you can't donate financially, the gifts of your participation and attention are the ones that matter the most. It's true. They do, because without you, well, we're just some people talking, and we don't know if anybody's listening. So, kits and cubs, please, please, please let us know what you think. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. That same email address is where you can send us your thoughts about the show or make some guest suggestions. And if you want to reach us on our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, on the shitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home, or if you happen to be listening on our YouTube channel, right down below in the comments section, let us know what you think. We do read everything, even though we're not able to get back to everyone, and anything you contribute to the show, either financially or in word, goes back into the show. So thank you so very much, kits and cubs, for all you do for us. Remember, we now have an Instagram, and we also have a DamFam Discord, so the fun keeps going after the show if you like to have some bonus at DamFam time outside of the time that I am here. Please go for it. They're wonderful spaces. Because democracy is something that you do, forever-canadian.ca, kits and cubs, that's where you go to if you want to sign that petition to get a question to keep Alberta in Canada on the ballot there for a vote. The good folks at Forever Canadian, led by Tom Lukasik, would definitely need your signature, so find out where your pop-up locations are. And of course, if you've got a little bit of money to hand over to them, because that type of operation definitely engenders some costs, I'm sure that they would be grateful for your help and support. If you live in the province of Quebec, November 2nd, municipal elections, and in Yukon Territory, November 3rd, territorial elections. Find out about your candidates and make a plan to vote. And remember, friends don't let friends do democracy alone. And of course, petition our Commons petition, E-6679. As usual, I am going to put the link to it in the chat, kits and cubs. Mr. Grizzly has signed, so have I. Please go there and sign yourself and share it with your friends. It's a petition to try and make it such that there would be consequences for politicians who directly and intentionally spread misinformation. So we definitely want a little bit more honesty in our politics. So please go and sign. It would be very welcome. And we have 37,430 signatures to date. Let's watch it grow. Okay, kits and cubs, words of wisdom. You know what? I am going to say, kits and cubs, for my words of wisdom, get yourself a wonderful beaver sweetie like mine. I was not feeling in the mood at all to cook last night, and my beaver sweetie, even though he had a very, very, very big day, I was just not feeling it at all. Was able to cobble something together that was absolutely delightful and hit the spot. He treats me very, very, very well. So, yes, find yourself someone who will cook for you when you are ill. That's the best I've got. It could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now at the count of 3, may I please have you say, it's audience participation time. Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you guys are so fantastic at that. How can I deny you, especially when you do it with that much gusto?
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
All right, kids and cubs. And I promised you yesterday that I would get back to you on that. The performance from the Canadian speed skating team at that stop in Montreal. It ended up being 7 gold medals, 2 silvers, 1 bronze, and 2 fourth places to go with that. 10 medals, 7 gold. Could you imagine if they did that at the Olympics? Oh my God, it would be such a momentous occasion. This team is really, really, really good, kits and cubs. So I would definitely encourage you, if you're not following short track speed skating, do so. And I'm including a little something in the chat here. It's an article from CBC that came out a short while ago at the beginning of the season, recapping last year's season and making the case that this is a team to keep our eyes on and that will give us a lot to cheer for this year. So go Canada, go, and go Jays, go. Let's win this first one, especially today. Let's send a old chicken and waffles a lesson or a message, I should say. All right, that's it for me. Have a wonderful weekend and join us tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern. Mr. Grizzly has indeed confirmed, and we will have a casual Friday at the Lodge. Eager Beaver Nights. I love doing that. All right, have a beaverific day, and we'll see you in a few hours for those of us who will be joining us tonight. And for the rest of you, we will see you on Monday. Amour et bisous. Lots of love. And now, I must, like magic, vanish. Ah.